Don't give in to other people's influence. Believe in yourself. In search of your goal, don't listen to anyone, only your heart. In this matter, you need to be steadfast and unyielding in relation to pendulums and very attentive to your soul. Perfection. And finally, let's consider the most controversial and paradoxical case of imbalance. It all starts small, but can end with very serious consequences. As a rule, from childhood, we are taught to do everything diligently, conscientiously. We are brought up with a sense of responsibility and instilled with the concepts of what is good and what is bad. Undoubtedly, this is how it should be. Otherwise, the army of slobs and mediocrities would be huge. But for especially zealous adherents of pendulums, this sinks into the soul, so much that it becomes part of their personality. The desire for perfection in everything develops into an obsession for some people. The life of such people is one continuous struggle. Guess what? Of course, with the balancing forces. The attitude to achieve perfection everywhere and in everything creates complications at the energy level, since assessments inevitably shift and, consequently, excess potential is created. There is nothing wrong with the desire to do everything well. But if excessive importance is attached to this, the balancing forces are right there. They will simply spoil everything. In this case, a feedback loop arises, and the person becomes more and more fixated. He wants perfection, but it turns out the opposite. He desperately tries to fix everything, and it turns out even worse. Ultimately, the desire for perfection becomes a habit and can turn into a mania. Existence turns into a continuous struggle, and this automatically poisons the lives of others, because the idealist is demanding not only of himself, but also of others. This manifests itself in intolerance of other people's habits and tastes, which often serves as a reason for minor conflicts, sometimes developing into major ones. From the outside, the absurdity of attempts to achieve perfection in everything and at the same time tyrannize others is clearly visible. However, the idealist himself enters the role so deeply that he begins to think that he himself is an impeccable and infallible person. Since I strive for the standard, then I myself am the standard. He does not even admit this to himself, because he knows that the feeling of his own superiority does not fit into the framework of generally accepted concepts of perfection. But the feeling of being right in everything is very firmly entrenched in the subconscious of such an idealist. Here, the idealist is tempted to appear before humanity as the supreme judge, deciding what and how all the other lost souls should do. Naturally, he easily succumbs to this temptation. After all, the feeling of being right acts as a justification, and the desire is driven by the righteous desire to put everyone on the true path. From this moment on, the master of destinies, having donned the mantle, appropriates the right to judge other people and pass sentence on them. In fact, such a trial, of course, does not go beyond the framework of everyday accusations and instructions. However, at the energy level, a powerful excess potential is created. The judge takes upon himself the mission of deciding how these foolish and worthless creatures should behave, what they should think about, value, believe in, and strive for. If a runt decides to have his own opinion on this matter, he must be put in his place, and if he persists, then he must be judged, sentenced, and labeled so that everyone knows who is who. I'm sure that your portrait, dear reader, is very far from the one drawn here. This book cannot fall into the hands of a cretin convinced of his own rightness. It is already clear to him how everyone should live, and he has no doubts in this regard. But if you meet such a person, look at this copy with interest. Here is an example of the most flagrant violation of the law of equilibrium. We are all guests in this world. Each is free to choose his own path, but no one has the right to judge others, sentence them, and label them as leave criminal law aside. So, it starts harmlessly, with the desire for perfection, and ends with the claim to the privileges of the host. Therefore, the resistance of the balancing forces which previously manifested itself in the form of minor troubles will increase. If the offender is under the protection of the pendulum, then he can get away with it for a while. But eventually, the time will come to pay the bills. When the guest forgets that he is just a guest and begins to claim the role of the host, he can be thrown out. Importance. Finally, let's consider the most common type of excess potential importance. It occurs where something is given excessive significance. Importance is excess potential in its pure form, the elimination of which causes the balancing forces to create problems for the one who creates this potential. There are two types of importance: internal and external. Internal or personal manifests itself as an overestimation of one's merits or shortcomings. Its formula sounds like this: I am an important person, or I am doing important work. When the arrow of one's own importance goes off the scale, the balancing forces take over, and the important bird gets a slap on the nose. The one who does important work will also be disappointed. Either the work will not be needed by anyone, or it will be done very poorly. But puffing out your cheeks and spreading your fingers is only one side of the coin. There is also a reverse side, namely belittling your merits, self-abasement. What follows, you already know. As you understand, the value of excess potential in both cases is the same. The difference is only in the signs. External importance is also artificially created by a person when he attaches great importance to an object or event in the surrounding world. Its formula is, "This is of great importance to me," or "It is very important for me to do this." In this case, excess potential is created, and the whole thing will be ruined. If you can somehow curb the feeling of internal importance, then with external things are worse. Imagine that you need to walk on a log lying on the ground. Nothing could be simpler. And now you have to walk on the same log thrown over the roofs of two high-rise buildings. This is very important to you, and you will not be able to convince yourself otherwise. The only way to eliminate external importance is insurance. In each specific case, the insurance will be different. The main thing is not to put everything on one scale. There must be some kind of counterweight protection, a spare route. I have nothing more to say about this. In fact, everything has already been said about importance above. Can you guess? Everything that has been discussed in this chapter is a variation on the theme of importance, internal or external. All unbalanced feelings and reactions: indignation, discontent, irritation, anxiety, excitement, depression, confusion, despair, fear, pity, affection, admiration, tenderness, idealization, worship, delight, disappointment, pride, arrogance, contempt, disgust, resentment, and so on are nothing more than manifestations of importance in one form or another. Excess potential is created only when you attach excessive importance to a quality, object, or event inside or outside yourself. Importance creates excess potential, causing a wind of balancing forces. They, in turn, give rise to a host of problems, and life turns into one continuous struggle for existence. Now you can judge for yourself how much internal and external importance complicates your life. But that's not all. Remember the strings of the puppets. Pendulums cling to your feelings and reactions: fear, anxiety, hatred, love, worship, sense of duty, guilt, and others. As you understand, all of these are consequences of importance. Literally, the following happens. Here is an object in front of you. On an energetic level, it is neutral, neither good nor bad. You approached it, wrapped it in a package of importance, stepped aside, looked and gasped. Now you are ready to give energy to the pendulum because there is something to hook you on. The donkey will obediently trudge after the carrot. Importance is the very carrot with which the pendulum can capture the frequency of your radiation, pull energy from you, and lead you wherever it pleases. Thus, in order to enter into balance with the surrounding world and gain freedom from pendulums, it is necessary to reduce importance. It is necessary to constantly monitor how important you perceive yourself and the surrounding world. The inner guardian must not sleep. By reducing importance, you will immediately enter a state of equilibrium, and pendulums will not be able to establish control over you after all. There is nothing to hook onto in emptiness. You may object. It won't take long to turn into a statue. I am not calling on you to give up emotions altogether or reduce their amplitude. In general, it is useless and unnecessary to fight emotions. If you try to control yourself and outwardly remain calm while everything is seething inside, the excess potential will be further aggravated. Emotions are generated by attitude, so attitude should be changed. Feelings and emotions are only consequences. There is only one reason: importance. Let's say I have a birth, death, wedding, or some other important event. Is it important to me? No. Am I indifferent? No, also not. Do you see the difference? I just don't make a problem out of it and don't torment myself or others about it. Well, what about compassion? I think I won't be wrong if I say that compassion and help to those who really need it have never harmed anyone. But here too, it is necessary to watch the importance. I made a reservation that help can only be given to those who really need it. But what if a person wants to suffer? He likes it that way, and your compassion is a way for him to assert himself at your expense. Or, for example, you saw a crippled beggar and gave him some money, and he grinned maliciously at you, and he was not a cripple at all, but a professional beggar. In the world of animals and plants, and in nature in general, there is no such thing as importance. There is only expediency from the point of view of fulfilling the laws of equilibrium. A sense of self-importance can only manifest itself in domestic animals living near people. Yes, society has some influence on them too. Other animals are guided in their behavior only by instincts. Importance is an invention of people to the delight of pendulums. A strong deviation towards external importance gives rise to fanatics. And a deviation towards internal importance, who do you think? Samodurov. It may seem that with such a layout, it is generally scary to take a step. Fortunately, everything is not so bad. Equilibrium forces begin to noticeably affect you only if you are strongly attached to your ideas, fixated, and really go too far. With pendulums, everything is clear too. We are all under their influence. The main thing is to be aware of how they get their hands on you and how far you allow them to go in this. Reducing importance will not only significantly reduce the number of problems in your life. By giving up external and internal importance, you receive such a treasure as freedom of choice. How, you ask, since according to the first principle of transurfing, we already have the right to choose. You have to have, but you cannot take. The balancing forces and pendulums do not give. Because of importance, the whole life passes in a struggle with the balancing forces. There is no energy left not only for the choice itself, but also for thinking about what, in fact, I want from life. And pendulums constantly strive to establish control and impose alien goals. What kind of freedom is there? Any importance, both internal and external, is far-fetched. All of us mean absolutely nothing in this world. And at the same time, all the riches of this world are available to us. Imagine how children happily splash in the coastal waves. Let's assume that none of them imagines that he is good or bad, the water is good or bad, the other children are good or bad. As long as this situation exists, children are happy they are in balance with nature. Also, any person came into this world as a child of nature. If he does not disturb the balance, all the best that is here is available to him. But as soon as a person begins to invent importance, problems immediately appear. He does not see the cause and effect relationship between the created importance and the problems, so it seems to him that the world is an initially hostile environment, where it is not so easy to get what he wants. In fact, the only obstacle to the fulfillment of desire is artificially created importance. Perhaps I have not yet been able to convince you of this. However, my arguments are far from exhausted. From struggle to equilibrium. Is it possible to resist the balancing forces? This is exactly what we do every day. All life consists of a struggle with the balancing forces. All difficulties, troubles, and problems are connected with the work of the balancing forces. In any case, resisting the balancing forces is pointless. They will do their job anyway. Efforts aimed at eliminating the effect will lead to nothing. On the contrary, the situation will only get worse. The only remedy against the balancing forces is to eliminate the cause, namely, to reduce the excess potential of importance that gave rise to them. Life situations are so diverse that it is impossible to give a universal recipe for solving all problems. I can only give general recommendations here. Every person does nothing but build a wall on the foundation of importance and then try to climb over it or break through it with his head. Instead of overcoming an obstacle, wouldn't it be better to pull a brick out of the foundation so that the wall collapses? We all clearly see our obstacles, but it is not always easy to see what foundation they are based on. If you are faced with a problematic situation, try to determine where you are going too far, what you are fixated on, what you are attaching excessive importance to. Determine your importance and then give it up. The wall will collapse, the obstacle will disappear, the problem will resolve itself. Do not overcome obstacles, reduce importance. Reducing does not mean fighting your feelings and trying to suppress them. Excessive emotions and experiences are consequences of importance. The cause should be eliminated attitude. One can advise to treat life philosophically as much as possible. Although this call has already become boring, it is necessary to realize that importance will bring nothing but problems, and then deliberately reduce it. Reducing external importance has nothing to do with neglect and underestimation. On the contrary, neglect is importance with the opposite sign. You need to take a simpler attitude to life. Do not neglect, but do not embellish. Think less about what kind of people are good or bad. Accept the world in its ordinary manifestation. Lowering your inner importance has nothing to do with humility and self-abasement. Repenting of your mistakes and sins is the same as flaunting your virtues and achievements. The difference here is only in the sign, plus or minus. Your repentance may be needed only by pendulums that want to establish control over you. Accept yourself as you are. Allow yourself the luxury of being yourself. Do not extol or belittle your virtues and shortcomings. Strive for inner peace. You are not important and not insignificant. If your situation is very dependent on some event, find a backup option. To calmly walk along a log, you need insurance. In each specific case, it will be different. Just ask yourself the question, what can serve as insurance in this case? Remember that it is useless to fight the balancing forces. You cannot suppress fear or anxiety. You can only reduce its importance. And this can only be insurance or a backup option. Never put everything on one card, no matter how true it is. The only thing that does not create excess potential is a sense of humor, the ability to laugh at yourself and good-naturedly, so as not to offend at others. This alone will not allow you to turn into an insensitive dummy. Humor is the very denial of importance, a caricature of importance. When solving problems, you must follow one golden rule. Before you take on the solution of a problem, you need to reduce its importance. Then the balancing forces will not interfere, and the problem will be solved easily and simply. In order to reduce importance, you must first remember and realize the problem situation arose as a result of importance. Until you explain to yourself, as if in a dream, that any problem is a product of importance, and plunge headlong into this problem, you will be completely in the power of the pendulum. Stop, shake off the obsession, and remember what importance is. Then deliberately change your attitude to its object. This is not difficult. After all, you know that any significance only interferes. The main difficulty is to remember in time that you are floundering in internal or external importance. For this purpose, your watcher is needed an internal observer who constantly monitors all your internal values. A person's thoughts are captured by importance in the same way as muscles involuntarily tense up. For example, when something oppresses you, the muscles of the shoulders or back are in a spasmodic tension. You do not notice this tension until pain appears. But if you remember in time and pay attention to your muscles, you will be able to release the clamps. Catch yourself on importance every time you prepare for some event. If the event is really important to you, do not build it up even more. The best recipe: spontaneity, improvisation, easy attitude. Preparation should only be as an insurance. In no case should you prepare seriously and thoroughly. This increases importance. An active experience builds it up even more. The potential of importance is dissipated by action. Do not think, act. If you cannot act, do not think. Switch your attention to another object. Let go of the situation. The highest efficiency of any action can be achieved if you remove the focus of attention from yourself as the performer and from the final goal, and transfer it to the process of performing the action. In this case, I am not doing important work, and the work is not important, thus eliminating excess potentials and balancing forces do not interfere. The action is carried out dispassionately, but not at all carelessly or carelessly. You may have a doubt. Why is it necessary to remove the focus of attention from the final goal? How can you do work without thinking about the final goal? Understanding this non-obvious fact will come to you in the following chapters of the book. Why does it sometimes happen that you are very afraid of some event? Constantly think about it. Imagine all sorts of accompanying difficulties and problematic situations. And in the end, everything ends simply and happily. And vice versa, it happens that you treat the upcoming event frivolously and get completely unforeseen troubles. In the first case, the assessment of the event goes off the scale in the negative, and in the second in the positive. What happens in the end is the result of the action of balancing forces. The forces must balance the excess potential artificially created by you. This is what they do. One might assume, based on this, if I intentionally draw the most terrifying pictures before the exam, then I will certainly get the highest grade. No way. This is an artificial intention. Such an intention is a product of the mind, not the soul. You can try to deceive yourself, but it will be just a sham that has no energetic basis. Only the intention of the soul has an energetic basis. That is why you cannot get what you want by simply visualizing a picture. But we will talk about this later. Never, under any circumstances, boast even about what you have quite rightly earned, and especially about what you have not yet achieved. This is extremely disadvantageous because the balancing forces in this case will always act against you. Be at home, but do not forget that you are a guest. If you are in harmonious balance with the surrounding pendulums, that is, swing with them in unison, then your life flows easily and pleasantly. You seem to have entered into resonance with the world around you, receive energy, and achieve your goal without much effort. If you have brought yourself to such a state that it is almost impossible to live in balance with the world around you, for example, your husband beats you, then you should think about taking a decisive step and changing your environment. Maybe it seems to you that there is nowhere to go. This is a suggestion of the pendulum, which benefits from keeping you with itself. There is always a way out, and more than one. Remember the fly on the glass that does not see the open window. You should only avoid rash, sudden movements. The optimal way out will be found as soon as you reduce the importance and free yourself from the influence of the destructive pendulum that does not allow you to live in peace. You now know the ways of liberation, failure, or extinction. This concludes the large and complex topic of balance. Now that you understand the mechanism of action of the balancing forces, you can easily determine where the cause of certain failures lies. We have come to the conclusion that it is necessary to observe the principle of balance in everything. And now I must warn you against following it too much. If you get hung up on it, try to follow it fanatically, then you will violate the principle itself. If you explain to a centipede in detail how to walk, it will become completely confused and will not be able to move from its place. There must be a measure in everything. Allow yourself to sometimes disturb the balance a little. Nothing terrible will happen. The main thing is that the arrow of importance does not go off the scale. Summary. Excess potential is created only if the assessment is given importance. Only importance specifically for you gives your assessment your energy. The magnitude of the potential increases if the assessment distorts reality. The action of the balancing forces is aimed at eliminating excess potential. The action of the balancing forces is often opposite to the intention that created the potential. When renting yourself out, turn on the inner caretaker of impeccability. Discontent and condemnation always turn the balancing forces against you. It is necessary to replace the usual negative reactions with a positive broadcast. Unconditional love is admiration without the right to possess and worship. Setting conditions and comparisons give rise to dependent relationships. Dependent relationships create excess potential. Idealization and overestimation always end in debunking myths. To achieve mutual love, it is necessary to give up the right to possess. You will definitely have to pay for contempt and vanity. Free yourself from the need to confirm your superiority. The desire to hide shortcomings gives the opposite effect. Any inferiority is compensated by your inherent merits. The higher the significance of the goal, the less likely it is to be achieved. Desires that are free from the potentials of significance and dependence are fulfilled. Give up the feeling of guilt and the obligation to justify yourself. To give up the feeling of guilt, it is enough to allow yourself to be yourself. No one has the right to judge you. You have the right to be yourself. Money comes by itself as an accompanying attribute on the way to the goal. Meet money with love and attention, and part with it carefree. By giving up external and internal importance, you gain freedom of choice. The only obstacle to the fulfillment of desire is importance. Do not overcome obstacles reduce importance.